Welcome to the Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. You are listening to episode 12, and we're going to take a little shift from what we talked about on the last podcast. And and this also delves into education, but also into faith. Um, Last time we talked about the Marxist man, but you're on Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post, and this is where we lift, inspire, encourage, and empower. And I'm your host, Richard G. Medlock. Yes, on episode 11, I wanted you to try to understand the mindset of those in this country and around the world, but especially in this country, that are attacking ICE agents, setting up police with ambushes and shooting them, that are fighting against the Constitution, fighting against the government, fighting against Trump, fighting against religion. And I laid out a pretty good case. I've got a lot of feedback from episode 11, and a lot of it was basically, this is an eye opener. And I asked, go research it yourself. And some of them have and found what I've was talking about. So we're switching tunes a little bit today, and we're going to talk about the other side of this. And to do that, I chose a gentleman from a philosopher from before Christ in the BC era. And his name was Mencius or Mengzi. Now, let me preface with this because I firmly believe that our Father, our Creator, our God in heaven, gave a lot of men, a lot of people on this earth, knowledge, good knowledge, through the light of Christ, through the Spirit, to help them understand right from wrong and to guide other people and to try to do what is right. And as we look back in history, you say, well, Mencius lived in, he was in 372 to 289 BC. And he was called the second sage after Confucius. He took Confucius studies and expanded them. Now, he was a towering figure in early Chinese philosophy. He lived during the Warring States period and is best known for his optimistic view of human nature and his deep belief in moral cultivation. Now, folks, as we go through this, you will see that this coincides with a lot, if not most of, Judeo-Christian values. And you say, where did he get these? I believe he got them from inspiration as God would give to people according to what they could understand and apply to themselves. Now, you still had dictators and so forth. No, you didn't have communism. You didn't have communism in China to 1947. So this is why Confucius and Mencius and other Chinese philosophers could teach, promote what they did. So Mencius, in my opinion, was the greatest of the Chinese philosophers. Now, as I said earlier, he's a towering figure in early Chinese philosophy. Now, let's back up to Confucius. He was called the Master Kong. Now, he was born Kong Q from 551 to 470 BCE. Now, let me back up here to Mencius. His name was Mengzi, his real name. but he became Mencius, a title. Same thing with Confucius here. So Confucius is known as the first teacher in China who wanted to make education broadly available and who was instrumental in establishing the art of teaching as a vocation. Interesting. Interesting. The art of teaching as a vocation. He also established ethical, moral, and social standards that form the basis of a way of life known as Confucianism and widely adopted around the world, not just in China. So let's look at Mencius and his core philosophy. At the heart of his teachings is the idea that human nature is inherently good. I think most of us think that. There's good in everybody. Evil is taught. He believed that every person is born with the four sprouts, innate moral senses that, if nurtured, grow into full virtues. Well, let's take a look. The first sprout is compassion, which he believes would turn into benevolence, or as they called it, Ren. Next is shame. Now, we can bring shame on ourselves. We can point shame to ourselves. We can feel guilty about things. And because of that, we feel bad because we did something we weren't supposed to. That helps us become righteous. Called yi. I guess it's yi, pronounced yi. The next one is courtesy. Courtesy becomes propriety, or li, which is recognizing everybody's rights and their space and respecting that. Right and wrong, Mencius taught, can become wisdom by knowing the difference between right and wrong. This is right, this is wrong. I think. So he argued that just as seeds need the right environment to grow, people need, now get this, education, reflection, and ethical leadership to fully develop their moral potential. Education. Here we have 2,500 years ago, a philosopher saying we need education. He's just following what Confucius was talking about, making the art of teaching a profession. They need to be educated from the time they're born. Absolutely. We started reading to our children when they were still infants. They were just a few months old, or from birth. We were reading to our kids. They might not have understood it, but we were reading to them. Reflection. This is an art I've used over and over and over with myself and with many people. Reflection is a system of asking the questions, well, how did I do with that? How did that turn out? Could I have done better? Could I have helped others in a better way? And so forth. You ask questions and then answer it. It's a reflection. I've done that with men and students, with adults, I should say adults and students. And it's not that they've done anything wrong. You just want them to evaluate, to think about what they just did. You can even do it in the middle of a project. How are things going? Are you achieving the goals that you set out? What do you think you need to do next? Those types of questions. And ethical leadership to fully develop their moral potential. Now, we're going to get into this in a little bit about this ethical leadership. Now, he also emphasized the role of rulers. The role of rulers or leaders in setting a moral example and believed that unjust rulers could be justifiably overthrown. A bold stance for his time. Now, where do we see that philosophy, that concept? Well, we saw it in Cicero, we saw it in John Locke, and we saw it in the Constitution and or in the Declaration of Independence. If a ruler or rulers are unjust, the people can take them down. Justifiably overthrown. Our founders did that. They told King George III, no, 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 no. You're unjust. We're not doing this anymore. So these are bold statements in any time. And Mencius believed in that. Now, let's look at some of his quotes because some of these have been said over and over and again. But he says, the great man is who does not lose his child's heart. Now, I love that. You got to be a kid at heart, okay? You got to look, you got to have fun, you got to relax, you got to chill. He felt like this was a call to preserve innocence, wonder, and sincerity through life. Yeah, kids are innocent. And they wonder about everything. They want to explore. They want to go outside, get into things, get into the creek, get into the mud, build a fort, do all sorts of different things, question things, and have this true sincerity about you that others will see. Too many adults lose this. And he's saying the great man is he who does not lose his child's heart. His next quote, he who loves others is constantly loved by them. He who respects others is constantly respected by them. This is a timeless reminder of reciprocity in relationships. Now let's go back. He who loves others is constantly loved by them. Does this not go hand in hand with the second great commandment? Love thy neighbor as thyself. Because when you give love, don't you get it in return most of the times? Yes, you do. The same thing with respect. We want to show respect to those that deserve it and give it to them, and in turn, they will give it back. He was pretty firm, pretty constant with all this. The feeling of compassion is the beginning of humanity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this reflects the belief that morality begins with empathy. That we feel what you're going through. We might not have gone through it, but we can feel what you're going through. Another quote, when heaven is about to confer a great responsibility on a man, it first exercises his mind with suffering. And that's interesting. He refers to heaven. Interesting, right? They believed in a higher power, greater than man. So when heaven is about to confer a great responsibility on a man, it first exercises his mind with suffering. Now, this is kind of a poetic reflection on how hardships shapes character. You can either grow from a hardship or you can become weak and submissive and give in to that hardship and blame others and blame God or whoever you want to blame. Not my fault, but what can I learn from this hardship, from this suffering? There is always a lesson to learn, always. And he believed that. And he says, by doing that, a great responsibility can come to that man because they understand. Then they have more empathy for others. Only when someone refuses to do things will he be capable of doing great things. No, wait a minute, wait a minute. If he refuses to do things, how can he be capable of doing great things? It says refuses to do certain things. Now, this is a lesson in moral boundaries and integrity. Moral boundaries and integrity. There's certain things I am not going to do. It's not right, and I'm not going to do it, no matter what it costs me. This is what he's saying here. So when you can stand up and say no to bad things, things that are immoral, things that are bad, things that will hurt other people, then you're capable of doing great things. It's a great lesson. So, Mencius' legacy on not just, excuse me, Mencius's legacy lives on not just in Confucian thought, but in modern discussions of ethics, leadership, and education. All right. So let's explore his ideas and compare to other philosophers. Let's look at how Mencius might inspire a classroom engagement strategy. Now, this is how might he inspire classroom engagement strategies? Now, Mencius may not have written a teacher's manual, maybe Confucius did, but his philosophy offers rich inspiration for student engagement rooted in empathy, reflection, and moral growth. So here are his ideas and how we can translate them into classroom strategies. Now, I want you to listen to these and pay attention to these. Well, pay attention to the whole thing. This is an important lesson here today. Cultivate the four sprouts in students. Mencius believed every person is born with four innate moral tendencies. So let's go back to them. Now, we talked about compassion earlier, but in a classroom, service learning projects or peer mentoring. Service learning projects or peer mentoring. So let's divide those for a second here. Service learning projects. You can sit in a classroom and you can talk about doing all these good things and being this and that, but getting out there and doing it's two different things. Now, I don't, my children, when they went through school, some of their classes did service projects. They went into the community and did service projects, which we still try to do things today. Now, about 3-4 years ago now, a student in our church, she's graduating from high school. She had to do a service project for a class or a club she was in. Well, she chose to gather disability disabled mobility units, wheelchairs, walkers, bath seats, canes, etc., crutches, etc. And she put together this program to go out and uh, promote it and do all sorts of things. I put it on my Facebook page and promoted it. And she had an overwhelming response to her request. Overwhelming response. She didn't know where to put all this stuff. Her mom called me and said, Richard, do you have a garage we could put this in? I said, I don't. Not that much. Some guy saw this that owned self-storage units, called her up and says, I will give you a storage unit to put these things in for free. A 20 by 20 unit. The community got involved. All this stuff kept coming in. Then they set up a plan to distribute it. And it was great. This is how you learn. By doing and peer mentoring. The value of one student teaching another student. Number one, it solidifies the information they learned when they teach it to another. And they're teaching it to another student and saying, hey, if you can do this, I can do this. Peer mentoring. The next one is in the shame thing. Reflective journaling on ethical dilemmas or classroom behavior. Talk about the ands and R's. Is this behavior good or is it bad? Why? What's the value of having this attribute? What's the value of doing these things? What's the negative of having a certain attribute? You discuss these things. You act them out. Ethical dilemmas. When I love teaching ethics classes, and right before the big crash in 2007, 2008, I was working with the state of South Carolina, went around doing CEUs, education units for people with licenses. And this was in the banking and mortgage industry. You would not believe, I mean, some of those people, their answers, when we're talking about ethical dilemmas in the mortgage industry and banking industry, it was shocking. I mean, I told some people, I said, these people need to be in jail, some of these students. They have no morals. They just want money. But anyway, but it's interesting the discussions you can have. Even just about classroom behavior. Let's talk about classroom behavior. Let the students set the standards. Courtesy. Classroom norms co-created with students. That's what I was just talking about. Let the students create the boundaries. Then they own it. They're going to enforce it. In my high school, we had a student government. We had judges. Matter of fact, I was an assistant prosecutor. We'd literally, somebody did something wrong, they'd get a ticket, they'd come to court, we'd try them. They had a defense attorney, and we'd have a jury of their peers, their students. The students decided. Now, there were certain things that went right to the principal, which were really bad things. But the students enforced the rules. They made them up and they enforced them. Once they made them up, they created them. We had a constitution at our high school. Other educators from around the country would come look at our high school and want to go back and copy it. Right and wrong. Socratic seminars are debates on real world issues. Let's talk about philosophy, but let's debate on what's going on in the world. Well, we could spend all day in classes right now debating what's going on and the wrongs and the rights. And is it ethical? Is it not ethical? Is it moral, immoral, etc.? We are having those debates in society. Are you paying attention? Are your students paying attention? So this approach encourages students to see learning as a path to becoming better people, not just better test takers. All right. Emphasize moral reasoning over rote learning. Now, Mencius argued that people learn best when they reflect on their inner moral compass. Use case studies or role play. Absolutely. Ask open-ended questions. What would be the right thing to do here and why? I oversee 26 student or college instructors right now. I'm always asking them a question. What are you doing? And do you feel like you can do it better? Can you improve it? I challenge them. Some of them come back and say, and they tell me, and they went down and says, that's fine. One question I like to ask, are you listening to the students? But open-ended questions. Everybody can sit there and go, nah. They're not involved. They're not listening. You want them involved. And this is what Mencius was talking about. Encourage students to connect personal values to academic content. Now, this is powerful, folks. Their personal values to academic content. To understand if what they're studying is something they really want to apply to their lives or just have it to pass a test. Now, if we were teaching the right things in school, they would be accepting most of it. This process builds deeper engagement by making learning personally meaningful. Model virtue as a teacher. Mencius believed rulers, and by extension teachers, should lead by moral example. I hope everybody that's listening agrees with that, because that's what we need more of, not only in the United States of America, but around the world. Moral leadership, model virtue. Now, what does he suggest here? Practicing transparency and fairness in grading and discipline. Don't have a teacher's pet. Don't have a student that you just don't like. You don't like their attitude, and you're going to, give them bad grades, and you're going to discipline them all the time, send them to the principal. That's not how this works. Let me put it to you this way. I'll have a new assignments come out, and I'll have a instructor. And now these are online classes. I only have one or two students. And I says, but in the last class, I had 25. And I said, those one or two students are just as important to Heavenly Father as those 25 you had last time. Makes them think a little bit different. So we need that type of thinking in our classrooms. Virtue. That is virtue. Admitting mistakes and showing intellectual humility. I got a question from one of my instructors this morning about one of his students. It's a good dilemma. I didn't have the answer. I had a partial answer, but they need a full answer. So I went to those of authority that can answer it and give us the correct answer. I don't want to start throwing something out there that's not correct and cause all kind of chaos later on. Nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. Why don't we look it up? See if we can find the answer. If we can't, then we'll go do some research later on. Demonstrating respect and care for every student's voice. They can say something and it's just stupid as all get out. And other students might laugh. You might even laugh. But you know what? You respect them for wanting to speak up. And you can go back with a question and say, how does that fit in? How do you feel like that applies to you in this case? I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can do that. So demonstrating respect. Students are more likely to engage when they feel seen, respected, and inspired. Number 4, encourage self-cultivation and growth mindset. Mencius saw moral development as a lifelong journey, framing mistakes as opportunities for growth. Going back to one of his quotes about suffering. What you learn from suffering will prepare you for great responsibilities. Using formative feedback that emphasizes effort and reflection. Positive feedback. I really appreciate your efforts in what you have done and what you have pointed out. Do you feel like there's something more here that you could add? Do you feel like this could be done a little bit better? Encouraging. Creating goal-setting rituals that help students track their own progress. That's right. Help them set goals. When I was a scoutmaster, every 6 months I would sit down with a scout and his parents and set goals for his scouting path for the next 6 months. What rank he wanted to become, what merit badges he wanted to take. Do you want to go to summer camp? What kind of camp outs do you like? Where would you like to go camping? What would you do to improve our scout meetings on Wednesday nights, and so forth and so on? I'd get their feedback, their goals. Then the parents are involved. The scout or the student has ownership, and it's written down and referred to every now and then. So this is creating, or this aligns beautifully with modern engagement strategies that prioritize autonomy and intrinsic motivation. Now, one more section here. I know we've gone over because this is part 1 of Mencius. This is part 1. We're going to do a part 2 because we haven't even gotten into leadership and other things. This is just an education. But what are the key principles of Mencius' moral philosophy? One, innate goodness of human nature. Compassion leads to benevolence. Shame leads to righteousness. Difference leads to propriety. Sense of right and wrong leads to wisdom, going back to the beginning. So let's look at this here. Innate goodness of human nature. We just did that. The heart mind, Zen. Mencius emphasized the role of the heart and the mind, combining as the seat of moral awareness. The heart is where the emotion is. The mind is where the intelligence is, where the reasoning power is. He says, combine those two. He believed that through self-reflection and ethical cultivation, individuals could align their actions with their innate moral compass, what we call reason. Let me get find mine. See, the mandate of heaven. He extended his moral philosophy to politics, asserting that rulers, elected officials, must govern with virtue and compassion. If they failed to care for their people, they could lose the mandate of heaven, the divine right to rule. Or in this case, we can add, they could lose the mandate of we, the people, to rule. We talked about that earlier. Moral education and self-cultivation. For Mencius, education wasn't about rote memorization. It was about nurturing one's inner goodness. He believed everyone, regardless of background, could develop virtue through learning and reflection. Now, this classroom right here goes on our whole life. All of this. It doesn't stop when you graduate high school or college or whatever. Number 5, moral agency and responsibility. Mencius held that people are morally responsible for their actions. While external conditions matter, individuals must strive to cultivate virtue and resist immoral influences even in difficult circumstances. His one quote, those that can refuse certain things can become great leaders. You refuse the immoral things. You overcome them. Mencius' vision is both idealistic and empowering. It suggests that with the right guidance and effort, anyone can become a moral exemplar. We're going to explore more of this and how this might resonate with modern leadership and education in part 2. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a good time. I hope you've learned from this and will continue to learn. And we'll be back for part 2 of Mencius, the second sage of China. He's a great study. I hope you do that. And have a great day. This is Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. Lift, inspire, encourage, and empower. I think we've done a little bit of that today. So have a great day. God bless you and God bless America. And this is Richard G. Medlock signing off. Good day.